Hi everyone. In this section, we will learn about parameters in Tableau. So parameter is nothing but a variable which can be used to replace a constant value. So let me just create a parameter. So as you can see here, so to create the parameter, you can actually do it in two ways. So you can click here and create parameter, or you can right click on the data pane and then create parameter. So the parameter can be of float or integer or string, boolean, all of these data types. And depending on the data type, like what values are allowed will be defined. Let me take float as an example now for a use case that we can deep dive into. So float is nothing but a number which we can define that for all allowable values or list or range. So maybe like let's make it like all for now. And let me just call this as maybe threshold or something. Okay, so let me call this as a parameter threshold. So right click and show parameter. So this is your parameter now. Now let me just quickly create a visualization with subcategory and sales amount. Let me just make it like a bar graph. Let me just sort it so you can actually see it is sorted from highest to lowest. Let me just also enable the text tables, or you can also just enable from here. And let's try to make sure that all values are seen. Let me just make it like entire view, and then you can just remove this header so that it looks a little cleaner. Let me also remove the grid lines. All right, now we have a simple subcategory by sales. So let me just call this subcat by sales. Okay, now we have created the parameter and we have created this visualization. Now, parameters are nothing but, like I said, it's a variable which can be used to change something static here. So here we have sum of sales, and now I want to the use case that we are trying to do is, let's say, based on this threshold, we need to define if something is greater than that into green maybe, or less than this value in red. So what I mean to say is, let's say I make it like 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. So now I want to say, like, if the sales are greater than 100,000, maybe mark it green. If it is less than 100,000, make it red. So let me just create a calculated field. So I'll say color by threshold. Okay. If sum of sales, or you can also drag from here by clicking on control, sum of sales is greater than, let's say, your 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, then make it green, else you make it red. Okay, this will result in a boolean condition, or maybe like green or red as the outcome, and you click OK. Now this is how you can actually see. Now if it is greater than 100,000, maybe like I want to flag it as green, let's make it green, and this is red. Now assume that there is another requirement from your team or your business where they want to see if the sales are greater than 167 or 150,000, then make it green, otherwise red. Now again, we don't want to actually modify the calculation or write another calculation, because let's say you have 10 different requirements, you'll end up creating 10 different calculations with all the thresholds and the ranges. So to succinctly handle this, what you can actually do is, we need to tag this parameter that we have created, which is the threshold, into the calculation and bring that into the view. So to summarize, you will have three steps. One, you created the parameter, and then you are showing that parameter here. And the second step is to use this parameter in any element of your visualization. Maybe here we are using it in a calculation, but you can also use this in a filter or in a reference line as well. So those are the three use cases which I'll cover in this video. This is the first use case where we are trying to tackle it through the calculations. So now let me go ahead and modify our calculation, which is color by threshold. If you can see here, this is a static value that we were passing. So as we learned from the definition of the parameter, you can actually handle this with a dynamic value based on your user selection so that you'll have some interactivity. So let me just bring this threshold. It'll show up in purple. So what we are essentially trying to do is this color, which is green and red, is defined based on this threshold now. So let me go ahead and click OK. So nothing changes because we have kept 100 loads. So let's make this 150, right? So I'll just make this 5, click enter. So if you see anything is more than 150,000, so you have your green. Anything less than 150,000, you have your red. Maybe like someone else maybe wants to keep this to 250,000, right? So let me just make it 2, and you will see if it is greater than 250,000 it is green, otherwise it is red. So this is the first use case where we are trying to I'll call this use case 1. This is via calculation, where we can use parameter in a calculated field in calculations. Right, sorry, calculations. Okay, let me just use the same sheet again. Maybe we'll add a reference line now. So now I'll add this reference line, and here as well the value is sum of sales. Now let's use the parameter that we created, which was threshold, right? So now if you see, maybe I'll make this a little darker or dotted as well, and maybe label it as custom. Maybe bring the threshold. Let me just get the value as well. Okay, now if you see, you have defined 250,000, so let's make it 125. So you can see like threshold is 125,000. If something is less than 125, it is red, and if something is greater than 125, it is green here. So just to look at the scale, so let's enable the headers. So you can actually see like we are here at 125k now. And again, this is dynamic. So let's make it 175. If you see, if it's greater than 175, it's green. If it's less than 175, it is red. So to summarize again, you created the parameter and you are opening this parameter by clicking on the show parameter, where you can actually input your values. Now this parameter has to interact with one of the elements here. So first use case, we played with the calculations. So this is the calculation that we modified, and this is changing based on this selection. In the second use case, this is the reference line, which is changing dynamically based on your input value. All right, this is, I'll make it like use cases, calculations, reference lines. Okay, then maybe we can look at another uh, calculation or another type, so wherein we can use it in, let's say, a filter. Now let me just create another parameter. So obviously, like I don't want to use this, so I want to show you another parameter. So maybe let's say top n sales. Now n is your dynamic value, which we will you know try to open it up for end users so that they can input their let's say you want to look at top 5 sales, top 10 sales by subcategory, and so on and so forth. So let me just keep it float for now. Maybe I'll keep it range. Here maybe like I'll keep it, let's say, top 10, and step size maybe I'll keep it like 1. All right, so first step, we created the parameter, show the parameter, so I can see here now. So now I want to filter my subcategory based on this sales. So I want to filter the top, let's say 10 subcategories. Now I'll take my subcategory and put this on the filter. Here you can see that there is something called condition. You can click on the by field, sorry, top by field, and here instead of top 10, I will get this number from the top n sales. Okay, so you will filter the subcategory by this number, which is something that you can define based on your requirement. Now, one moment, let me go to the filter. Condition is none. Here, top category. Yeah. So here, if you see, let's say I make it like I'll make this into type n. So let's say I want these are my top three subcategories with, let's say, the sum of sales, right? So if I make it five, these are my one, two, three, four, five subcategories, top five subcategories. All right. To know, like, you can actually use an index calculation. So it is nothing but it'll define a partition or a row number for each of your row. So let me just make it discrete. So I'll bring this here so you can actually see, like if I make it three, you will have one, two, three subcategories with the sales. So I make it seven. It's nothing but you have these are your top seven subcategories with the highest amount of sales, right? So this is how you can actually leverage parameters to summarize. I'll summarize this into 3 points. The first point is create the parameter and show up this parameter. In the second point, use your parameter that you've created, either this threshold or top end sales, in one of the visualization elements, such as you can use it in a calculation like this one, or you can use it in a reference line, or you can use it in a filter, and so on and so forth. Once you have used that, like you can change these values, and this will dynamically update your visualization based on your end user selection. That's it for now. This is a brief introduction to parameters. Thank you so much.